Welcome to Season 2 of the Weak Pastor Podcast, where we view Christianity through the lens of vulnerability.
Welcome to the Weak Pastor Podcast. We are so thankful that you have joined us for another new episode. We are excited. I'm actually really excited today. You know why? One of the reasons why I'm really excited, Suah? Have you noticed?
Why?
Have you
Why?
noticed? Have you noticed
What?
anything different? Like in my setup here?
You got a new boom stand.
Yes!
Is that?
Suah,
Yeah.
this boom stand is a game changer. It really is, because before I just had that upright one, and I
Yeah.
have to like literally be up like this the whole time, and it was such a pain in
Wait,
the butt.
when did you buy this?
I just ordered it, I think, last week. I ordered another one. It never came through Amazon, and so I ordered this one, and it is. And I know you've had the boom stand for a long time, and I'm just like, why did I wait so long? Why did I have to
Suddenly, I
suffer?
am reminded when you talk about Amazon not delivering on time, I am reminded of the story that I've once previously shared about,
Too much,
where
too
you know
much
where I'm going
Amazon?
with this.
Too much
No,
Amazon?
no.
No.
It's about like when I was in HD. No, it wasn't when I was in HD. It was when I was it was like literally my first week of starting on staff at Metro, and you had ordered a laptop from Amazon and an iPad. You ordered an iPad.
Oh, okay.
You ordered an
Okay.
iPad from Amazon,
All
and then
right.
it never arrived. And so you called them and complained. Because remember, Prime used to do this thing where it has to be delivered within 48 hours.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then it didn't arrive. And so you called Amazon and you were complaining to them. So they sent you a new one. But then the next day, the old one arrived. And to my dismay, you were like, Suah, what should I do? Now I have an extra iPad. Do you think I should raffle it off at like my HD discipleship class? Like, do you think I should just like give it? And I was so incredulous. I was like, you mean you're not going to return the iPad you did not pay for?
So I know you
Here's the
made me
thing.
return it. So I had to return it.
Well, okay, but now I feel a little bit regret about that because that was when I was super Pharisee. I was like 26, maybe. I actually think looking back on it,
Yeah.
I still would have, but I've come to the place where I now believe that these things are individual between you and your own God. So if God
My
felt
own
like if
God.
you
Like
felt like
I own
God
my own
gave
God.
you, yeah. I mean, if God gave
Okay.
you like peace about it, I don't think I would judge you for that. But back then, I was so
I'm sure you were.
shocked. I was
This was
so shocked.
this wasn't the first week, was it? When you started
It
working
was like
at?
the first week. It was at the Fort Lee office.
Wow. That's
Yes.
crazy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well,
And you had like it wasn't even like a, do you think I have to return? It was 0% that. It was you literally being like, what should I do with this?
exactly.
Like you had already
But I ended up
decided this
listening
was
to you.
yours.
So I ended up listening to you, the moral police. So that's it. So, but I tell you what, I'm very happy because this stand is absolutely amazing. And I don't know why I've waited this long to purchase one of these. This
Was
like
it
25
expensive?
bucks. $25.
Oh,
You know,
so why did you even buy that other
I have
one?
no idea. I should have just gotten this
Uh,
sooner, but I'm a very happy camper. But here's the one thing that we have to do before we get to our question today. Now, for many of you, you guys know that we actually have a YouTube channel, and the problem is that I know in the previous episodes I promised that every episode will be up on YouTube, but I did have a recording problem on my computer, and so I was not able to record some of the episodes, and and I couldn't put it up on YouTube, and I apologize for that. But I realized this past episode from this week was a really good one. It was a good one to watch on YouTube simply because I made Suah flex
Here we
and
go.
show her
Here we
bicep,
go
right?
again.
And
Here we go
and I was like,
again.
guys, get on YouTube and watch it. Check out Suah's bicep. But the thing is that it never recorded. So I don't want our listeners to feel like they got gypped, because I know what it feels like to get gypped, all right? And I don't like to get gypped. And so because of that, Suah, we have to show
Apparently,
our
you're not allowed to use
viewers.
that word anymore.
Why?
Whoopi Goldberg got in trouble.
Is that right?
She's getting canceled again for like the 100th time because apparently the word "gyp" comes from gypsy, and gypsy is not apparently
Oh my
a
goodness.
politically correct term anymore. So apparently we're not allowed to use the word gypped any longer.
Okay.
And you just said it like 4 times.
Well, I don't want our audience to feel like they didn't get what they wanted, right? I promised something, I didn't deliver. I'm going to deliver, all right? Now, guys, I want you to know that Suah has been getting so ripped these days
Can you stop?
that
You're
she
hyping
has
me
to wear
up.
she has to wear the sweater, the sweatshirt to cover up
No,
her
that's not
gains.
what
All
I
right.
said. You are
Remember,
completely
so
distorting
all
what I
right, so here's
said.
the deal. Here's the deal.
That's not
She
what I said.
she
No.
has been exercising really well. And so this is good because we're heading towards the end of our season. And then the first episode of season 3, I will promise that I want to see the 3 months gains. All right. So we'll check it out. But Suah, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to encourage you to take off that sweat, whatever that best sweatshirt that you have on,
My
and
sweat? Take off my sweat.
sweatshirt that you have
No.
on, the
Listen.
zipper
Okay.
sweatshirt. And
I
can you
have
just show us your bicep for the viewers because they did not get a chance to see it the last time because I was never able to record
I
properly.
have
So
okay, so on one hand, I had like little faith that you're going to be able to actually put this on YouTube. So once again, my kids' camps have started. Like our summers have already started. Like
oh my
vacation
goodness,
started at the
that's
end of
terrible.
May, like
That's
beginning of
terrible.
the first week of June. So my kids are already in camp. So my schedule's really wonky, and I only had like 30 minutes before I dropped them off, and then I had to like start recording. So I was like trying to figure out like what is my priority here. Like I can either read the Bible, eat breakfast,
Yeah, eat a
or
waffle.
put some makeup on. But then I was like, Pastor Peter is not going to be able to do this YouTube again. It's
Yes, I
fine.
am. No, I
So
will. I promise you, it's recording
I
as we
nixed
speak.
the
So
makeup. So
yeah,
I'm sorry if this
but
is
I
not
gotta say,
fit for
you look
like
fine
public
without the makeup,
consumption.
so it's okay.
Um,
And you
Okay,
nixed
and
it with
then,
us.
but then, so I'm wearing a sleeveless tank underneath,
Yeah.
but I was like, just in case Pastor Peter starts saying some crap about my bicep again, I better put on something over here so that it's not like in plain sight, you know? So I'm wearing this hoodie, and now I can't believe you're telling me to strip for our viewers.
Listen,
Like
listen.
that
The
is so
last
not
time when I
appropriate.
encouraged you to do that, you were like so open. You go, listen, I wore loose sleeves just to do this, and bam, and you just showed your bicep, which I
Yeah,
thought
but
was
that's like a one-time thing.
hilarious.
I can't like
I
redo
thought it
it.
was. Come on, Suah, please, please, for the sake, because
How about
listen,
I just take off my hoodie and then you guys can see if I've become one of those people who can't put their arms down. Also, okay, we gotta
I
nix
don't
this
think that's even
because I've had
possible.
so many
I don't even think that's
complaints from
possible.
viewers. I've had so many, not viewers. I've had so many complaints from listeners about how we just only talk about bodies and fitness, and I cannot deal with the
Suah,
complaints any
please,
longer.
Suah,
Tina, I'm
Suah.
talking to you.
Suah, please, please, you have to show the bicep, please, because I know the majority of our viewers would like to see the
Fine,
gains,
I'm gonna
and you
do it,
talked
but then
about
can
the
we move
gains.
on after?
Yes,
If I
we're
if I
gonna move
show
on right
you,
after,
okay,
right
can
after.
I just show you
This is
one?
this is Suah working out hard, dieting, exercising. Let's see now, and
No,
then we're
not
gonna see.
dieting, just exercise.
Okay, and then we'll see what it looks like 3 months later. All right? Don't you want a video
Dieting.
catalog of your gains? I'm helping you right now. I'm trying to help you. Don't
I
you
just
want a
don't know why
video
that has to go
catalog of your
public.
gains?
I
It's
can have a
okay.
catalog of my
Come
own.
on,
I
let's
just don't
go.
know why it has to go
Come
public.
on,
Okay.
let's see, girl.
All
Come
right.
on.
Ready?
Yeah,
Oh
let's see.
shoot. I'm also wearing a crop top. I'm sorry. This is not
Look,
this is not
look how
appropriate.
excited
This
you
is,
are to show your bicep off. It's like
yeah, okay,
you were.
ready?
All right, let's go.
Ready?
Come on,
You can
come
already
on.
see. Look at those.
Yo,
Look at
yo,
those
your delts
muscles.
are looking real
Look at that.
nice.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
That's a concept.
dang.
Oh, look, I even
Okay.
scratched myself the other day
That looks like a
doing
tattoo.
some
That
kind
looks
of
so cool.
look,
All
yeah,
right.
look at my triceps. Yeah, I'm
Wait.
doing
I
it.
can't see your triceps. I don't
So
think you have a
oh,
line.
yes, I do right there.
Oh, okay. It's
I'm
barely
getting it. I'm
noticeable.
getting
You
it.
might
Look
need
at
to get
that.
a
Look at my
deeper tan,
shoulders
girl.
are. Look at my shoulders. Okay, now can we move back? Can we go back?
Suah, impressive. I gotta say, I'm impressed,
Yeah.
and
No,
I expect 3 months from now for it to be
okay. I
even
just want to
more
say,
shrizzled. Okay.
though that the true gains you can't see because they're in the gluteus area, and that would be get us flagged. That would get us
Yes. No.
flagged
No.
for
That
maybe a
is where
different
we
type of
draw the
podcast.
line. Okay. We just that'll be just for your eyes, your husband's eyes, and your kids' eyes. That's it. All right.
Listen,
So, but anyway.
Asian woman, okay, Asian woman who are listening, who've genetically been at a disadvantage in terms of growing our glute muscles because of our genetics, our deficient genetics, hit me up. I have a great routine.
Yeah. Yeah.
A great routine.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. All
Let's
right.
move
Well,
on. Let's
that's
please move on.
fantastic. Fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you so much for doing that for our viewers. And so the question I want to ask is this is actually a very personal question,
I
and you might get
can't
in trouble
move
for
on.
this one. You can get in trouble, but I think we should
Trouble
answer it
from
honestly.
whom?
From the
Trouble with
person
whom?
because the question is simply this: who is the most annoying person in your life? Who is the most annoying person in your life?
Right now, it's you. You keep asking me to show my bicep.
No,
You
be
are.
honest.
You're the most annoying person.
Come on. You got to be better than that. Better than that. All right. So, who is the most annoying person in your life? All right. Think about that for a second, because it
How
might.
am I supposed to? I'm sorry. How am I supposed to answer that? Am I supposed to give like fake names? Like,
No, be
answer
honest.
that? I
Yeah.
can't answer
No.
that. No, that's so mean. It's like, what if like literally, what if that person is listening?
But if you love, I mean, it's okay. It's not that just because somebody's annoying
No.
doesn't mean you don't love them and care
Okay,
for
you how
them.
about you go and we'll
Yeah,
see
no,
what
no,
you
I'll go.
let's see. Let's see.
I have a
Okay.
very annoying person in my life. Okay, and it's my mother.
Okay.
My mother is by
That's
far the
not
most annoying person in my life. In my life, I love
okay.
her to death.
Um
I love her to death, but she is so annoying. So annoying.
I just want to say that somebody, an anonymous listener, once told me that the parts that he enjoys the most from our podcasts
I
is when
know who
Pastor
this
Peter
person is.
talks about how annoying his
Okay.
mother is.
So listen. I took my mother to South Africa with me. I just came back from South Africa a couple weeks ago, and I took her on the trip with me. She was with me for what? Well, I think we were there for 10 days. And I just said to her, I said, "Hey, mom, like I would really appreciate if you were not so annoying on this trip." All right. And so
Did you really say that to
I
her?
did. I said to her, I said,
How do you
if
say that? Like you said it in Korean?
of course, of course. So I said, if you annoy me on this trip, I will never take you on another trip ever again. Ever.
That's so sanctified of you to say that to
Ever.
her.
Well,
That's so
listen, the
kind.
threat has to
To the
be
person who
real and
gave you
legit.
life, the mother who gave you
Yo,
life.
who takes their mom on these kinds of trips, all right? Like on a business trip, all
I
right?
know, but
So
do you really have to threaten her?
I have to because she's so annoying. She's
Like, what do you
so
mean? Like,
annoying.
what annoying? Like, what
Listen,
kind of
she is so
annoying?
annoying. But so for the
Because annoying has different types.
yes, but meaning she's a nagger, all right? So I started buying my South
Mm.
African wine. Oops, that's not the one.
Oh God.
My favorite wine
Oh.
is the Netterberg Baron. It's a mix of Shiraz and Cabernet Sauvignon. So it's a fantastic wine. It's $4, literally
That's
four
amazing.
US, right? And so I like to buy these
Do
wines,
you
and so
ship it? Like you pack it in
no,
your
I
bag?
pack it in my suitcase, of
How does that
course.
not break?
You wrap it up in jeans and all your clothes.
Oh,
I've done this so
interesting.
many times. And so she's giving me like the stink eye because I'm buying this and I bought 6 bottles, right,
Mm.
with me. And so, I want to give a couple as gifts and stuff like that. And so she's like, how there's no way a pastor should be giving somebody wine for a gift. That's wrong, and stuff like that. So
Wait, what does she think about Jesus drinking
she
wine?
said Jesus never really drank. He
He
never
just
really drank.
made it. He
Yeah,
just
he
made
just
it.
he made the wine, but he never really
Mm.
drank. And
Do
so
you think
anyway,
Jesus
so
drank wine?
of course he drank wine. It
Yeah,
was a
okay.
normal
Okay,
part of
just making
culture that
sure.
day. He
Okay,
was
just making sure.
I think he had a righteous buzz going on in that wedding when he turned that water into wine. So anyway, especially if you
Okay.
watch The Chosen, you see that it's been, The Chosen, they show Jesus really enjoying that wine. So anyway, so yeah, so she's just, man, I'm telling you, she can be incredibly annoying, incredibly annoying. And when I came back from Africa, she was just, giving, going in, leaning in about how I buy all this drink and why am I buying wine and all that stuff. So I would have to say my mother, I love her to death, but she is incredibly, incredibly annoying. The most annoying person in my life, bar none, bar none. So, but I love her, but she is annoying. And my sister Ellen, if she's listening, she would say amen to that as well. Why is there so much silence?
No, I'm trying. I mean, I can. I mean, I can see how a nagging person can be annoying. Um, I'm just trying to. I don't have anyone who
Oh,
nags me
okay.
though.
Oh. And another thing, we went to a safari. So we stayed at the game reserve. This place is gorgeous, right? Nambiti Lions Lodge. I mean, this place is fantastic. It's a 5-star like a place. It's really
Mm.
nice. And she's so short. She's like 5 feet tall. But this is like an adults only like a place where you stay. And so we went into the room and they're trying to conserve energy and stuff like that. And so they're on solar energy and stuff like that. So the room is very dark. I mean, the room is beautiful. It's huge. It's beautiful. It's actually incredibly dark at night. They don't really have much lighting and stuff like that. So it's kind of dark. And she's like, "What kind of place is this? How come there's no lighting? It's so dark in here." And then the other thing she was complaining about was the sink because she's so short. She's the size of a child. I had to like
Okay,
create like a step ladder for her because she
but
couldn't wash her face because the sink was too high up for her
can
and
we
stuff.
rewind a little bit? You said she's 5 feet tall, but I'm
Yeah.
only like 3 inches taller than that.
Yeah.
So does that mean I'm also child sized?
Well, I mean, no, you're more adult size, right? Because
I
you
mean,
said the
5 feet is
average woman
not
is five. No, she's
like
short.
disability short.
But she couldn't fit. And so she's
Huh. Maybe she
complaining.
shrank.
Listen, she is complaining. She's like, I can't believe this place is bad, whatever. But and I'm like, but mom, this is like a 5-star resort. This place is beautiful and stuff. And so I was like, man, you're complaining. Annoying. That's
Is she
just
just
annoying.
critical? Is she just very
She can,
critical?
very critical
Yeah,
about
she's very
things. Very critical
critical.
of me,
Yeah,
very critical about a
yeah,
lot of different things.
yeah.
Any event. So my mom could be incredibly annoying. She is by far the most annoying person in my life. I love her, but she's incredibly annoying. So that's that. Do you have anyone that you would like to share
You
where
know,
you don't think you'll get in
I would
trouble?
bet you that some people would say I'm pretty annoying, and I'll tell
Hmm.
you why. It's not because I nag. I'm not a nagger. I don't think I'm hypercritical. Like I'm pretty whatever about
Yeah.
most things, but I think that's why people get annoyed with me. Like I've had people tell me that they find me annoying because when they tell me horrible things are happening to them, I don't understand why it's that terrible.
Like, what do you say to them? What do you say to them?
Because in my mind, it doesn't sound as bad as
Okay.
they seem to be experiencing it.
Okay.
Do you know
Interesting.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, do you understand what I'm saying? So okay, so like people will be, I had a friend who was complaining about how like she can't find a job, but I just felt like she wasn't really looking. And so I just kind of felt like it wasn't like she didn't earn the right to be complaining.
Wait, so she got upset with you because you weren't like, oh, I'm sorry to hear
She
that and
wanted me
stuff
to
like
be like, oh, that sounds
coddle her.
so stressful. Like that's so hard.
I mean,
But I'm like,
that's
that's not that
yeah.
bad.
Come
Or
on.
like some because I think I do have some friends who are very easily triggered. But
Mm,
to me, I guess I just don't show them the level of solidarity or like empathy that they're looking for.
mm.
Maybe I'm trying to. I just don't.
You don't have anyone in your
At this
household
point, I've
that's
weeded out
annoying?
most people in my life that truly irritate me.
Okay.
That's the great thing about your 30s, and I'm like at the tail end of it, right? You just you just don't care anymore about having, um, the like that being liked. Like you just don't care. Like if
Yeah.
people are not serving you, and if these friendships are not something that you feel like are worth investing in, because I have much less disposable free time now
Yep.
in this
Yep.
stage of
Yep.
my
Yep.
life than I did in my 20s. And so I'm not going to just hang out with somebody or invest in a relationship just because it's accessible to me and it's there. I'm only going to invest in the relationships and friendships that I really feel like are serving a purpose for me and like have value in my life. Um,
Okay. Okay. But
so I
how about a
weeded
family
out like
member?
most people.
You don't have a
So
family
that's the other
member?
thing, right?
You don't have a family member that's annoying? Like your husband, your
Well,
kids, your
no,
mom,
John's
your
not annoying.
in-laws?
John
No?
is definitely not annoying. John's not annoying. Okay, I'm gonna do this thing because this is a prickly topic. So this is
Yeah.
what I'll do. Okay, I'll tell you who's not annoying, and then by power of deductions, you guys can try to figure out who I think is somewhat annoying.
Oh. Okay.
Okay, John is not annoying.
That's
My
great.
children are not annoying. My
Okay.
parents are in Korea, so they rarely can annoy me. They're physically not here,
Yeah. Yeah.
and my mother-in-law is amazing and not annoying, and my sister-in-law is great. That's where I'm going to leave it. You guys can try to figure out
Boy, I wonder
what
who
is
that
being
might
unsaid
be.
there.
Ooh, okay.
The
All right.
one person that, if you guys can figure out, sometimes this particular person does annoy me.
And sometimes he does say some insensitive
How do you
stuff.
know it's a he? I mean, it could
Oh,
be
I
a
know it's
she.
a he. I know who it is. It's your father-in-law.
I just said you can't say it
I
because
mean,
there's family members
but you
who
said your
listen.
mother-in-law is not annoying, your sister-in-law is not annoying, John,
You
your
know what it
kids.
is? It's because okay, so I'll say this because I've been trying to figure out because lately he's been
But that's better
saying
than your
things that
mother-in-law
kind
being
of
annoying. You're lucky your
no, my
mother-in-law.
mother-in-law is freaking amazing.
You
Like my
are lucky.
mother-in-law
You are
is
blessed.
literally
You are blessed
the
because
most
most people
amazing
would say their
mother-in-law
mother-in-law is
ever.
annoying, not their father-in-law.
No.
So you're
Like
blessed.
she and I are like two peas in a pod. We get along so well.
And they
I've
live in
won the
Ohio,
lotto.
right? They live in
Yeah,
Ohio?
yeah, yeah.
Oh
Like
wow.
I've won the lotto when it comes to my mother-in-law. Like she's just
Seriously.
amazing.
That's amazing.
Um, my father-in-law. I think, some of it is that I think we're just such different people
Different
because he's very
creatures.
moody and
Yeah.
he's kind of sensitive. And I'm
Mm.
so not sensitive. I just kind of say what I feel like. But then I think the problem is, and I've thought about this recently because I was trying to figure out like, why does he trigger me so much? I think it's because of a history that I have with him, where how,
Yeah.
in the beginning of my
Right.
relationship with
Right.
John, he like treated me pretty terribly for the first like 2 years or three
Right.
years. And so I think because that's such a formative time in our relationship, I always carry around a certain level of defensiveness around him. So
Mm.
even though I have forgiven him for all of that and I've moved on, I
Right.
think the trauma response is still kind of there. So if he says something that kind of rubs me the wrong way, my defensive mechanisms kind of come back up.
Gotcha.
And so I'm like, I'm not continuing this any longer because I don't want to feel the way I felt in the beginning. And so
Yeah.
I have a much lower tolerance with him than if I did. And my mother-in-law doesn't ever say anything kind of weird or something questionable. But even if she did, I think it wouldn't trigger me because I love her. Like we have zero
Yeah.
baggage. Like all I have is positive emotions for her. But whereas in this relationship, because it started off on a rocky ground and I already had kind of I don't want to say it was trauma, but it was pretty terrible. To the point where like I was like, I'm gonna break up with John. Like I can't do this relationship anymore.
Wow.
So now I think carry some of that because I don't want to get
Yeah.
hurt
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
So I think that, so I don't know if that's like annoying, but he definitely is one of
Gotcha.
the only people in my life that kind of triggers me.
Yeah, and I think like, it's like you said, your friends, like we're not going to hang out with annoying people, right? We're not going to hang out with those who really, really
Yeah.
annoy us. But in
Yeah.
terms of like family members, you're stuck. I mean, they're your family, so there's nothing you can do about it. They're going to annoy you, and there's nothing you can really do about it. So anyway, okay. Well, Sua, thank you so much for answering that. I know that was a stretch for you, and that wasn't
But
easy, but I
I didn't
really
answer it. You answered it. I was going to leave it as a mystery,
I'm
but
terrible with multiple choices, but stuff like that. I don't test well at all, but this one I did really well. I'm proud of myself about it.
he's not a bad person. It's
Course. I
just
know you love him.
something
He's your
about
father-in-law, but of course, yeah.
something about the way he is and the way I am mixed with our history
Mm,
just sometimes doesn't go well.
I hear you. I hear you. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, cool. Well, listen, we want to talk about something a little different and just kind of I just came back from South Africa. I'm a part of an organization called Zamele USA, Zamele Wetu. It's an organization that our church was very privileged enough to help launch many, many, many years ago. And brought a group of about 12 people with me, and only two people from our church, but the rest were people from outside the church. And it's really
Which is
great.
good, actually.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I want Zamele to grow outside of Metro, and so it's part of that kind of leveraging your influence and trying to invite people to come out. And so it was a great group of people that came out. And I hadn't gone back to South Africa in since the pandemic, so it's been a while.
Hmm.
It's been close to about 4 years, I think, 4 years. And so, yeah, just to see what God is doing out there is just really amazing. Just really humbled and touched by the work that's being done there. But I think it got me thinking again. And I was kind of telling the group that came with us, and I was trying to remind them as well. And there was another person there from Covenant World Relief, and they did it as well. But like charity in America, in some ways, there is an unhealthiness about it, and I kind of want to talk about that a little bit because I do believe, many of you who are listening, you might be very charitable in terms of what you give to and things like that. But I think one of the things that I learned over the years of traveling the world and just kind of seeing what God is doing and looking at different folks who are trying to reach people, especially in those, marginalized parts of the world. I've realized that sometimes our charity can actually cause a deeper sense of poverty in those places. And I just kind of want to kind of talk a little bit about that. And if that's cool with you, Sua, like maybe we can just kind of play off each other and just kind of talk a little bit about it. But I think what I'm trying to get at with the charity thing is that sometimes and there's been articles written about it, about, in America, we really just give because we want to feel good about ourselves. Like we just want to feel good that we did something. We like to give to things that's very easily measurable. Like we could say, hey, I gave to build an orphanage. I gave where I am now helping people go to college, or go to school. And those are all, I'm not saying they're bad things. I mean, those are all
Mm.
good things, but we don't really think about how is what I'm doing and what I'm giving to, is it really helping to solve the terrible curse of poverty, or is it just perpetuating it or making it worse? right? And so I kind of want to talk a little bit about that and just kind of get and so you grew up in the third world country, for a big part of your
Apparently, we're
life.
also not allowed to say third world country anymore. I
What?
literally, we're also not allowed to say developing nations. Apparently, neither of those phrases they're no longer acceptable. I'm not sure what the replacement is, but apparently
Well,
we're not even allowed to.
yeah, I am
I
not going to
don't
PC
know.
this.
I
I am
don't
not
know.
PCing this, unfortunately. So I'm going to say third world country. So yeah, you grew up in one of those countries, Sua. So I don't know, but any thoughts on it before I just kind of go on my little rant and kind of go through some stuff. But any thoughts that you have, Sua? Just kind of you've been at Metro as well, but you also grew up in a country where it was a developing country. Maybe I'll say that. But anything. But love to get your thoughts on this.
I don't know. I have so many thoughts, but I don't really know. I just, I'm trying to think about where I want to start because I have a lot of different thoughts. Um, I will definitely go in with what you said about, and I think what I don't know if you said it in these words, but I think what you're implying is that a lot of the way we do charitable giving or charity work or philanthropic work here in America is geared towards meeting something in ourselves, like
Yeah.
something that
Yeah. Making us.
benefits
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily saying that in terms of like a financial return, but more so it has to give something in return to
Yeah.
us. So, for example, if we give, it has to make us at least at the very basic level feel good
Yeah.
about the giving.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably where we run into a lot of problems because sometimes the things that immediately gratify us in terms of giving are not necessarily the ones that are systemically helping solve the issues that we're
Right.
giving towards.
Right.
And a lot of times they're actually perpetuating the problem. So maybe you can kind of talk about what that looks like. The other thing that I will just say, because it's been on my mind a lot about Americans in general, I was listening to a podcast about a book called Evicted, and it's basically about um, it talks a lot about how taxation works in America and how the rich people are given a lot of subsidies and the poorer people, we have this negative idea of, quote unquote welfare queens or people that are
Yeah.
getting handouts. And we have this
Yeah.
very negative idea about that. And it made me think a lot about, and maybe we can talk about this at the end, but it made me think a lot about where this idea in America comes from, of how some people are deserving poor and some people are undeserving and
Mm.
poor. And I think like we differentiate between, oh, the people who are trying to find a job but they can't, those people deserve our help. But those people that take their welfare checks and go get their nails
Yeah.
done or whatever, like those are the undeserving poor. Or even little things like, when I'm in Columbus, there's actually a lot of people on the side who are asking for money. And I realized, I never give people who are
Yeah.
begging for money on the street money, right? And then one, like my kids would ask me, but why don't you? I thought God says you have to give people who are poor money. And then I
Yeah.
was trying to formulate a reason as to why. And
Mm.
I couldn't quite come up with a good argument as to why we give money to organizations versus individuals we don't. And my argument came out to something along the lines of, because we don't know what they're really doing with their money. And then they'd be like, but their sign says that they need food for their kids. And then I'm like, okay, but they might be lying or they could
Yeah.
be using it for
Yeah.
something else. And then they're like, but how do you know that? And it was kind of like I didn't have a very good formed argument for that because they're kind of right in some way. Like, how do I know what their situation is? But in my mind, I had already decided like that's not how you give. There's proper forms of giving and there's improper forms of giving. And who decides that? So anyway, going back to you, about perpetuating poverty through our
Yeah,
selfish.
sometimes we bring people on these trips with us to South Africa, and our natural tendency is that when we go into places like, we visited these people, I mean, these kids are orphans. I mean, their parents died early. And this one, it's an absolutely heartbreaking story. It's this one boy, he's a teenager and he lives by himself, and so we got a chance to meet him, and he was cooking something for himself, but it's heartbreaking to see that he has nothing. I mean, he has nothing. Seems like a really nice young man. He's still in high school, and our natural tendency then is to look at him and say, you know what, I'm going to now support him. I am now going to build him a house. I'm going to now support his school fees. I am now going to help him eventually go to college and all that. And I think, again, those are all with good intentions, but I think we don't think it through. We don't think it through, and then we don't ask ourselves, how do we really help somebody, in in living in that kind of abject poverty. Right. And so what I mean by that is, so naturally people like in our group would want to probably give money to this kid. Well, let me just give him
Mm-hmm.
some cash. Like, it's just so I'm sure he's struggling, and stuff. And so, we want to do that, so there's things that we want to do. And I know we do it because our hearts are beating, our hearts
Mm-hmm.
hurt,
Mm-hmm.
and we want to help and stuff like that. But I think, what we're trying to help our people to understand who went on this trip is we're just saying, listen, what this kid needs is not necessarily money. He needs a family. He actually needs people in his life that will love him and walk with him and journey with him. The problem with I think charity so many times is that we think about, oh well, we're gonna build an orphanage and we're gonna institutionalize these orphans now. And I think the reality is when they get older and then they age out of orphanages, meaning that they graduate high school, then they're no longer allowed to be in these orphanages
Mm-hmm.
anymore. And then what happens with these orphans is that they're alone now. They had a family when they were a kid till they were in high school, but now they're kicked out of this orphanage because they've aged out, and now they're all alone again. And how we really help that person, right? I mean, typically we're thinking, well, they're older now, they should be in a better place. But I have seen, just in my own experiences with orphans, that is one of the worst things that could happen. And what we really need to do is we need to find the community, the people that would care and love this kid, while they're a child, but even up until their adulthood, and that they're a part of this family. And when you're a part of a family, like you said about your father-in-law, my mother, all that stuff, like, you can't get rid of family. Family's family. We're always here for each other no matter what. And so, I think that's the idea behind it. And what I like to encourage our listeners is just for you to really think about, because I know you're giving to a lot of different things, but what are you really giving to? Are these organizations really helping to support people to really become self-sufficient on their own? Or are they just sort of putting a band-aid on a real big problem? And if by chance they walk away, are these people are they going to be in big trouble now? Right. And so I think that's it. How are we sort of tackling and dealing with the root causes of poverty? And so an example I can give is that many years ago, I'm not going to say what organization this is, but Zameli got a call from an organization, a world-renowned organization that if I said the name, all of you would know it. Probably many of you listening are supporting it. And they said, could you please come into this area because we're leaving. We committed 5 years to this place and we're here. We're done. We're out of funds. So we're going to leave. They need help. And so we go in there, and I happened to be visiting South Africa at that time. So we go in there, and it's a place in KwaZulu Natal, and we're talking to the people there, and then we're talking to this person who represents the organization. And so for 5 years, what they've done is that they've helped pay for all the kids' school fees. They've taken care of food and different things like that. And so for 5 years, they've helped like a community of people to sort of live out of poverty. They're not living in poverty anymore because they can eat, they can go to school, they got clothes and all that stuff. Now they're leaving. And when they've left, what they've actually done was create a deeper sense of poverty now because these people have forgotten how to support themselves. They don't know how to do it anymore because they've relied upon this organization to help them through in every way. They didn't teach them real life skills and things like that. And now they were calling Zamele, could you please help this community? And so what I saw, man, you're actually creating a deeper sense of poverty in this way. And I think that's what happens a lot. And I think, another example I can give is, sometimes, like somebody once shared this example and I thought it was brilliant. Sometimes like we as Americans or people from the West, we go to these places, these other parts, these quote unquote developing countries in the world. And like we go to like these impoverished areas and maybe they're used to eating frogs because that's all they have to eat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yet we offer them chicken, right? And it's like, wow, this is amazing, this is great, we have chicken, and we're giving them chicken as long as we're there with them. And then what happens is that when we leave, we take the chicken with us. There's no more chicken anymore because that source is gone. And then what we've done now is we've created a deeper sense of poverty because no longer do these people even want to eat frogs anymore. They just want to eat chicken, but they don't have the chicken anymore, and now they got to get back to eating frogs. And so it's like you create a deeper sense of poverty now because you've left. And so I think one of the things that I just would like to encourage our listeners is just to really be careful, because as you are supporting different things and different organizations, ask yourself, are they really dealing with the root causes of poverty? Are they helping people to become self-sufficient on their own? Are they helping them? Is there an infrastructure for that? Or is it just we're going to pay for this so that they can have meals and all that kind of stuff? And I know that that's needed, don't get me wrong, but how are we really helping? And I think that is how we can hopefully deal with the major issues of poverty and hunger and things like that in this world if we can look into that and realize that this should not never ever be about us feeling good about ourselves, but we have to think about how can we really empower the people. And it's not easy, and oftentimes the organizations we end up supporting that do that, it's not as sexy. We can't really quantify things in some ways, but I think it's the way we do it, and I think it's the best way to do it. So I don't know, any thoughts as you're listening, Suah?
But I think that's what it is, though, is like it's very difficult to find a way to motivate people to keep investing and giving into something that
Right,
doesn't in some way meet a desire that they personally have or
right,
make them feel a certain way, like do something for themselves. And I'm not necessarily criticizing that because I think it's a human desire. Like, if you see somebody who's in need, then and you want like that high school student or high school teenager, I don't think it's a bad thing that that person is feeling unsettled and this has this desire where like I have to help him. I think that's good. I think that's because we have compassion. I think that's because we were created with compassion. But I guess the question is, how can we use that in a more responsible way so that we're not feeding this machine that's perpetuating the poverty?
yeah,
And that is really difficult to decide if we are measuring the success of it based on how it made us feel, which is how
right,
we do
right,
it. So,
right,
for example, I think a lot of the reasons why, for example, like I'm trying to think some of the charities, quote unquote, that like became really big. Like I know for a while, when social media really started becoming used as a marketing tool for charities, like charity water was like a big one. And
yeah,
people
they're
would
huge.
say, for my birthday, please create a well for the people in this like indigenous poor
Right,
community. And then
right,
people would donate all this money. And it was like this very sexy idea,
right,
like
right,
everybody is giving money. And
yeah,
now I feel really good because for my birthday, I have a well that is dedicated to
exactly,
me or whatever,
exactly, yep,
or like if
yep,
you buy a pair of shoes, we will donate a pair of shoes to
yep,
somebody in need. Like it just feels like, oh, what? I can shop and also feel like I did
yeah,
something charitable. Like,
yeah,
but there's
yeah,
always a layer where it's something about me, right?
absolutely,
And I think it's so hard to be responsible in terms of giving to charities if the primary motivation is something about yourself, like something about me,
yeah,
and the other thing I want to say is, there's a lot of really great news that has come out of the whole war in Ukraine, not the war itself, but the way neighboring countries in Europe have accepted a lot of these refugees who are now displaced. But I also remember reading an article saying that in the beginning, it was like this huge response where people in Poland, like people in neighboring countries, were like welcoming these refugees. But then after a couple of weeks to a couple months, people started feeling like, well, when are they going to leave?
yeah,
Because now it's kind of making my life a little bit inconvenient, or
yeah,
very
yeah,
inconvenient. And I think
yeah,
that's the other thing is like it's so easy for us to invest in charity initiatives that are short term or one time because it doesn't really make any difference in the way we live
yeah,
our lives.
right,
But I think when we start giving to things and that giving starts impacting or inconveniencing or becoming uncomfortable in terms of the way we get to live our lives, I think those are the types of initiatives that are
yeah,
really difficult to sustain. And that's why I know organizations come up with these like sexy marketing things
yeah.
because they need us. Like they need us to give to things. I'm going to say something a little bit controversial, but it's fine. We have to be
I got a lot
honest.
of controversial stuff to share later on.
Okay, no,
So
but
yeah,
this is like, okay, okay. I hope I'm probably going to offend people, but I have never gone on a short term mission trip with Metro. I used to go to a bunch of them in high school and in college, and then I stopped doing them by the time I came to Metro. I had a lot of discomfort about the whole idea of people going to not I'm not talking about the Zemelli trips because I think those are actually presented as more of an ambassador's trip. I'm talking about if there's something terrible that happens in a country and then we raise all of these funds and then we send a team over there to help restore the things that are broken. I personally just don't understand why we need to go over there with $10,000 of flights and lodging when we can raise that fund and give it to some
yeah,
responsible company or organization that's already there in the community, because then we're not spending $1,000 per person on plane tickets. Like I just couldn't understand that. And I feel like the reason why is because that it makes us feel good. Like our church sent a team, or I went there
yeah, yeah,
personally and
yeah,
I
yeah.
fed these orphans. I
Right,
built
right.
this house. But without that, would that person give that money? to that an organization that they don't even know without
Yeah.
that personal link? I'm not sure. And I think that's where, we have, and I don't want to be like a Debbie Downer and say it doesn't come from good intentions. I really think a lot of the times,
Yeah.
if in fact, most of the times when we give, whether they're good organizations or bad, I think we give them from a good place in our heart. I don't think we have bad intentions, but I think that's where it gets really murky is when we can't differentiate how much of this is because we want to feel good
Yeah.
and it's serving some kind of thing that we are motivated to get versus for the actual need itself,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I would say that one of the things, one of the caveats that we do when we take people out on the Zameli trip is just we want you to come out because we want you to be blessed by seeing what God's doing, like
Right.
encountering God and seeing what God's doing out there. Not that you can come out and do something significant, but come out and see what God's doing there. Maybe you can learn the programs and then go back and be an ambassador for Zamela in that way. But I agree with you on that. And I think that, that's the mindset of Americans. We want to give and we give so that we can feel good. And so one of the things that I want to encourage, because if you're listening, you actually have a lot of means and you like to give, I think there's a greater temptation to want to take greater control of how you want to help people in different parts of the world and things like that. And because you have means, you kind of want to do it your way or quote unquote the American way or in a way where you want to feel good about it. And so I'm going to call out a couple celebrities right now because I think, and I might get hated on this, but I think this is just a
I don't
real
think any
reality.
celebrities listen to our podcast.
Yeah, that's true. So I'm going to call out Oprah. I'm going to call out Oprah on this because I have had personal encounters, not with Oprah, but with the orphans and how she has reached out to. Because when we first went out to South Africa, we went to an orphanage. And in this orphanage, Oprah was there. Oprah did a whole special on this place. And as a result of it, Oprah had her kids. They call it the Oprah kids. And when she would be in South Africa, she would invite them to Johannesburg and they would stay at her, $10,000 a night, kind of hotel suite kind of a place. And these kids would get spoiled rotten. There was about 10 to 12 of them. They would get spoiled rotten for the weekend. They'd get everything that, they could possibly dream of and they get gifts and stuff. And then they go back to the orphanage and they show all these other kids what Oprah gave to them. And those kids are just so sad that they were not Oprah kids.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And they were just devastated and they felt terrible. They felt like second-class citizens in this orphanage because they were not chosen by Oprah, right? That is creating a deeper sense of poverty because you're singling out a couple kids and now you're helping them and showing them special preferential treatment, but there's a whole orphanage there of 85 to 100 kids and they're not getting that kind of love, right? That's a dangerous thing to do. And then what she also did was that she built a school in South Africa. It was her boarding school. It was like she spent a ton of money. They did a whole special, 1 hour special on this place. And I'm not sure where she built this school, but it was like the greatest academy. She had the best teachers, all that stuff. It would be a dormitory. It would be great. And she invited these kids to be a part of it, to be a part of that. And again, it was an epic fail. It was a ton of money being spent, but it was an epic fail because again, she was trying to remove these kids from their natural setting, thinking that this was going to go well, and it didn't go well, and eventually it didn't go well, and it kind of blew up on her face. And so again, that's sort of like this idea of I have all this money, I'm going to do this. This is good. I'm going to bring these kids over, and naturally, listen, I get tempted to do that too. We all get tempted to do that, and we have to be careful. We have to be careful because in the end of the day, it's not helping them because what it's doing is that it's creating sort of like, an elitist mentality. Well, I got chosen. Look at this. And that's creating a deeper sense of poverty around them. And it's a really dangerous thing to do. And so, I think we have to be careful. I think we really do have to be careful. And the last one that I would say that I'm a little bit critical of, and I don't know, I have not read any news about how it's going, but LeBron James kind of creating his own school in Ohio. You're around there,
Oh, in
right, Suah?
Akron?
Yeah,
Oh,
in
yeah, I
Akron.
mean,
He
kind of, but I
created
don't know what's
his
going
own
on there.
academy. It's like it's everything is paid for and stuff like that. If you go, and I don't know, but I remember when I watched that, I was actually sad. Again, I was like, here is a very wealthy man, and now he's trying to do something where he's trying to get these kids out of where they are, bring them into this place, this amazing academy, and give them like a world-class education. Again, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. I get it. But why would you spend that much money? There's better ways in how you can try to alleviate poverty and improve education, not just for these select kids, but how about for the entire area of Ohio or Akron and things like that. And so I just think sometimes we think about these things and we think because I got the means, I'm just going to do this because it makes me feel good. And this is what I'm convicted of. But it's really, but how much are we really helping? Are we creating a deeper sense of poverty in our area because of this for the kids who don't have it? Like, how am I helping out in that way? And I think that's the thing that we have to be mindful of. And just recently, I would just say that sometimes I get approached by different organizations because they want Metro to support it, right? Like different types of
Mhm.
organizations, very well-known organizations. And this one guy, reached out to me and we connected a bunch of times and just kind of connected and had meals together and stuff. And I just said to him, I just said, listen, I can't support your organization. The church will not support your organization because I've had firsthand experience with what your organization does in these developing countries. And you guys really don't help in the area of poverty. What you guys do is you create more poverty. And he had a really hard time hearing that from me, but I just had to be very honest with him with it. And I share with him my experiences and things like that. And so I know it was a very difficult probably thing for him to hear. But yeah, but I think this is just stuff that I've learned over the years of just, going into different parts of the world, seeing what's really working, what's really not working and stuff like that. And I guess that's the thing. So we just have to be careful of going to certain places and just doing it for ourselves or helping certain organizations and just because we feel good about it. But we got to ask ourselves, am I really helping? Am I helping to deal with the root causes of poverty? And I think it's really sad because what happens in people in developing countries, and this is a clear example I can give in Africa, in South Africa, there was a Zulu woman that said, you know what? And this was before we started Zamel. She said, I can have as many children as I want because the more children I have, more people from the West will support me. And it's this creating this sense of I can depend on the West to help me to deal with my poverty. And I think what we have to do is we have to sort of, have this mindset of how are we helping these people to believe, no, you can get out of poverty if you can begin to work together and trust each other and all that kind of stuff. And so there is that mentality, I think, in developing countries is that we need somebody to support us and get us out of this hellhole that we're in. But I think the real way of transformation is we got to help people believe in themselves that they have everything they have within them to actually do this, but they just need some structure and help. And I think that's an important thing. So anyway, I've said a lot, but those are just some thoughts that come to my head on this. And I just want to encourage our listeners that I think that's an important aspect is that when we give, knowing that we're doing something that we know that we're actually helping and dealing with the root causes of poverty. So that's really an important thing. So
I think I agree probably with all the celebrities. I think with LeBron, though, it's a little different because Akron is his actual community. And I think that might be the difference. Like for me, I think when I look at organizations, and obviously, I guess people might be listening, being, okay, so now what? Like, how the heck am I supposed to differentiate which is a good one, which is a bad one? I don't have, a degree in social welfare. Like, I don't know which ones are the responsible organizations. And even within responsible organizations, there have been a lot of scandals where like they found out the board was using the money for other things or personal gains. And so there's been a lot of organizations that went bust for that reason as well.
yeah,
So
yeah,
if you add that dimension, it's just very overwhelming and daunting to think about like
yeah,
what is a responsible, wise investment for my charitable giving.
yeah,
And I feel like for me, I always try to see, going with what you said, if the person is from the community, or the most of the work is being done by community leaders versus outsiders who are going in, because I think there's a much less risk of this savior mentality playing in if it's a person that's actually trying to help their own community, because there's so many nuances and so many things about a community that makes them unique that an outsider just doesn't see. There's no formula, but I think the way a lot of the Western organizations have done charity is they have the set formula and they go to a country and they basically just use their
right.
formula without taking
And it
into
never
account
works.
a
It
lot of the
never works.
unique, yeah,
It
because
never
there's so many
works.
unique differentiating variables in each community. So for example, I have a friend from my small group who's from Kenya, and she goes and she helps her village. It's not an established nonprofit, but she knows her community because it's where
Right.
she grew up. It's
Right.
where her family grew up.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so I feel completely at ease, supporting her because I know that this is her community. Not only does she know the nuances, but she also is personally invested in her community because it's personal to her. And I think that's a lot of times when we run into problems is when we allow these outside wealthier groups to go in and just
Yeah.
be like, I don't need to really
Yep.
listen to what you guys are doing. I don't really need to listen to what your community needs. I'm just going to go in and do whatever it is that I see is your problem.
Right.
So, I
R-
mean, do we have any real practical ways of
Sure.
trying to figure out which organizations are
Yeah.
quote unquote good and bad or
Yeah.
bad?
I would say
you know?
the best thing that you have to do is that when you're looking at domestic or global, international organizations, is that you got to ask yourself, are these organizations being led by indigenous people, right?
Right, right.
So if you're supporting an organization where they're saying, okay, well, guess what, we're going into, let's say South Africa, and we're going to serve the community. Here's what we're going to do. Don't support that organization. It has to be an indigenous movement. There has to be something that's already being done, and these are leaders, the indigenous leaders that are there, that know their community, like you said about your friend who's from
Hmm.
Kenya, right? If that's not there, don't support it, because what they're probably doing is bringing in their Western influence so that they can make this thing marketable and do it in the way that they want to support it in that way. And so it's really important to support organizations where it's an indigenous movement and an organization that's willing to empower these people to lead. And the West influence is very minimal. These organizations have an indigenous leadership, and it's moving in that way. I think outside of that, we shouldn't do it. We shouldn't do it. And I know there's a lot of large organizations that are all over the country. They're all over the world. I mean, I would say, yeah, but they're not indigenous, right? And so that's an important aspect to it. And this is a real interesting thing that really helped me. Like, and this is why I want to thank a good friend of mine. His name is Alex G, and he'll be on the podcast in a couple of weeks. I interviewed him about leadership, and here's the cool thing. Like, one time we met with this guy, and I'll just say he was a white guy, good guy, doing really great things with reentry and different stuff like that, and helping people and stuff like that. And it was really good. And he was talking about what he's doing and all that kind of stuff. And he says something to him that I thought was so profound. He said, "Listen, I hope you can work yourself out of a job and you can go and find another job one day." And you can do that. But he was basically saying is like, how are you raising up indigenous leaders? How are you raising up people in the community that understand what it's like to go to prison and go and having to come out and trying to find a job and things like that? He said, like, that's the mark of a good, healthy organization. That there's not just some guy from the outside that comes in and now tries to get support and tries to help people. I mean, that's good in and of itself. But then, he was like, you can get a job anywhere you want, but how are you going to raise up indigenous leaders? And he challenged it, will you leave your organization and give it to someone else? Somebody who really has unfortunately have gone through this, but can really work and support the people in that way. And so it's that idea of like, like, are we just going to come in and do our thing, or we're going to actually let the people who are there, raise them up and then let them lead it in a way. Because I think that's a lot more effective. So I would say that whatever organization that you might be supporting right now, think it through a little bit and ask them, is it really an indigenous movement? Is there people in those places like, Thailand, whatever it might be? Are they actually empowering these people to lead on their own in that way? Are they able to do that? And I think those are like the best kinds of organizations to look for. And I think that's an important one to do even domestically as well. Like, I call out organizations as well, and I'm just saying, hey man, like, your organization is not reflective of the ethnicity that you guys represent and that you guys are serving. And so I'll do things like that as well, because I just think that's important, that we have to support indigenous movements. That's just something that I'm very passionate about. So I think that's one major way in how we can sort of safeguard and kind of evaluate even now how how is this organization really building the community up in that way. So that that's my
Not
thought.
to like completely hijack and detour a little bit, but I did just want to say, because I had a talk with one of my friends, one of my neighbor friends, about, because she was asking me about what my thoughts were on poverty in America in general, because she's a public health
Yeah.
specialist. And so she
Okay.
was just picking my brain because I'm a social worker, and we were just talking about it. And we were talking about how during the pandemic, the Biden administration gave a certain, I don't know, it's like a poverty subsidy. It was a subsidy for families. Remember how they gave out all of these subsidies for parents with children? And I think they gave everybody, but then they gave more to parents who had, like, depending on the number of children they had.
Mm,
And it actually significantly decreased the number of families that were at the poverty rate. Like, it almost got rid of the poverty in
mm,
America. But then, so a lot of policy analysts were like, oh, we're probably going to continue this, right? But they didn't. They ended it. They ended it even though there was clearly, and it was like a marginal amount. It wasn't even like a huge
yeah.
dent in the actual budget, but they stopped it. And the pervasive idea was the reason why they stopped it was because people were like, I mean, sure, there was a lot of like other political things going on, but there was this sense of like, but it's not deserved. Like people, they didn't earn this. And so it can't just continue, even
Mm,
though it literally meant that children had more food at home and children literally had a better life and their quality of life was increased. It didn't matter because at the end of the day, this principle of it wasn't earned, they don't deserve it, like was such a big
wow.
hurdle. And the reason why I bring this up was because we had a very interesting conversation. And again, I don't want to hijack it, but we inevitably talking about poverty in America because we talked a lot about international, but I think there's a lot of needs that are also in terms of the domestic sense. We talked about inevitably the conversation turns to race because
Yeah.
it's just a fact that Black Americans have a significantly higher poverty rate than anyone else. And she and I were having this conversation about how she would talk to her friend, who was a very conservative white male, and he cannot accept this idea of there being a systemic reason for poverty. Like he just can't accept it. He gives so much money. He's so generous. He
Yeah.
donates a bunch of money to
Yeah.
all of these initiatives for hunger and, illness. He just cannot accept this idea that there is a systemic reason for why there's
Yeah.
disparate outcomes. Like he just can't handle it. And I
Yeah.
said to her, why do you think he can't though? Like, what is it about this? Because he's clearly a person who's invested in the well-being of our country and the people in this country and the children. Like, why is this such a hurdle for him? And she was like, because if he were to accept that there's a systemic reason, then he would have to accept that he needs to give more. Like he's
Mm,
benefiting from something that these people are not. And that
mm.
challenges everything about how I got to where I got,
Yeah.
right? If most of us believe that we are self-made, that most of us believe that the wealth that we have or the privileges that we have are ours to use as we wish because we earned it, that's a different thing. Then we
Yeah.
can give money and feel good about it because we're like, I made all of this money because I worked really hard myself.
Yeah.
And now I get to give it to the charities that I want. And look at this great legacy that I'm leaving. Versus if you were to come to a place where you believe, no, actually, the cards were completely stacked differently for different groups of people in this country. And everything that you say was self made. Yeah, of course, I'm not doubting you worked hard for it. But there's another person on the other side of the spectrum who could have worked just as hard, who could
Mm,
not have gotten what you got. It challenges the core belief of who I am and how I got to where I got. And I think that's another hurdle in terms of giving. I think people it's one thing to give because you're like, this is my money.
yeah.
I can do whatever I want with it and I'm giving out of the goodness of my own heart. And it's another thing to give because you say, well, all money is God's. God gave me all of these privileges. The world is not a just place. I have unfairly benefited in a way that has put me where I am. And
Yeah.
so it is my responsibility, not because I am a good
Yep.
person, not because I am a generous person. It is my responsibility as somebody who God put in this place and gave me the privilege that he gave me. It is literally a sin not to. Like, I know that's a
Right.
little extreme, but I think it's a different perspective in terms of how you think about giving. Are you giving because you
Yeah.
have to? It's our responsibility to give because of
Yep.
what God blessed us with. Versus, are you giving because you're like, this says something about who I am. I am a
Yeah.
good person.
Yeah.
I'm a
Yeah.
generous
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
Hopefully that made sense. I know I hijacked
Very
it a
much
little bit,
so. And
but
it's I think it's a
yeah.
great way for us to end, because it really is. And it's so interesting because Sua, you and I years ago, we still do it till this day. We started a Black Korean Pastors Association and we met
Mm-hmm.
up on a
Mm-hmm.
monthly basis. That really was because of your influence. You were like telling me in the office, Peter, you got to do this. Like you have to do
It was
this.
your idea. I
Are you
just said you
sure? I
should
could have
do it.
sworn it was your idea.
Yes. No, no,
All
it
right.
was your idea.
Okay. All right. Well, any event, I remember one
But
of
I'll
the
take the
meetings.
credit.
Yeah, take the credit. I really think it was you. I don't think it was me. It was you. So it's so one of the meetings, and this is when you left, Sua. One of the Korean pastors said, like, I don't understand, like, how come, like, basically that question, like, how come Black people can't, like, the majority, like, so many of them live in poverty still to this day. Like, what's going on? Why is that happening? And this is why it's a safe space to
Mm-hmm.
ask these
Mm-hmm.
questions, because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times we're ignorant, we don't know. And one of
Right.
the pastors, one of the Black pastors, he just says very plainly, he goes, listen, every time we've tried to make it and
Mm,
go ahead, you've killed everything. People have,
mm,
white Americans have killed everything. Like we had our own Wall Street in Oklahoma, and what happened?
mhm,
It got burnt down. Every time we've had great leaders emerge, what happens? They get killed. They get
mhm,
assassinated.
mhm,
He said every time we've tried to go and get out of this poverty life and try to make it in this country, there has always been systemic racism
mhm, mhm,
where we have lost loved ones, we have lost our leaders, and we don't have, and that's one of the major reasons why we've struggled for so long. And it was just such a great way in how we responded, and I think it was a way to help people understand, oh man, there's a whole other thing that I don't realize, and yet I just keep thinking, well, why can't you do this? Why can't you do this? And I think
mhm,
it really is
mhm.
important to understand that reality and understand that in some ways we're all culpable and we're all responsible. And we have to realize that, yeah, that's one of the reasons why we should support, because in some ways we've all benefited from the institution of discrimination and racism in some ways, and we have to be careful, through that. So, but anyway, a couple of organizations that I'll just kind of throw out there that if you guys are kind of in that place, well, I would love to know, like, are there organizations that I can start supporting that actually really do care about indigenous, people and supporting organizations? I think there's just really two that I would really recommend. And unfortunately, they're people that I know very well. One Day's Wage is an excellent organization, and it's my buddy Eugene Cho. He runs that organization, and the main thing he does is that he looks for indigenous leadership. He
Mm,
partners with grassroots organizations all around the world. They're an excellent organization. Check them out. Highly encourage you to do that. The other one is Covenant World Relief. Now that is our denomination, but I know the leaders of that place, and they have dozens and dozens of partners. And again, their understanding is the same thing. We are trying to work with indigenous movements that really care about dealing with the root causes of poverty. They're an excellent organization, that does amazing stuff or all around the world. If you're looking for like global type impact, okay. So that's another one. Zemele, I cannot leave out Zemele USA. It is an excellent organization that really does want to work and continue to work with leadership. And me knowing the organization very well, I just came back from South Africa. I'm just so delighted to see the Zamele Wetu staff, and I met these young women, and they're women that were from the neighborhoods. They were women that were from
mm.
the valleys, and now they've been raised up, trained, and now they're loving and caring former orphans, things like that. And so, that's another great organization. Zamele is Zimele. I think ZameleUSA.org is the organization too. So yeah, feel free. Those are some of the organizations, but do
Isn't it
think.
Simile Community?
No, it's Zamela US.
Oh,
We changed
okay.
it. It's
Okay.
ZamelaUSA.org now.
Okay.
And so, but I do encourage you guys to think about that. And if you're giving, that's great. And if you have a heart to want to give, great. But we just want to encourage you to make sure that you're partnering with organizations that really do support people on the ground and that care about indigenous leadership and giving
Oh,
them the
and
power and access
we
to
forgot
run
to
the organization. Yeah.
we forgot to say you should pray. I know that sounds so stupid, but I also think sometimes it gets very overwhelming when you try to figure out which organizations to support because there's so many
Yeah.
organizations that are constantly vying for our attention. And I think as somebody who gets emails all the time about like donate to this initiative, and now even on social media, it's like, it's my birthday, donate to this, like donate to this. And obviously these are not bad things, but I think it can be really, really overwhelming. Like, they did a study and they showed a group of people a story about one girl who was hungry. And then they did a study on another group of people where they showed them the statistics of how many people are hungry and how many people are
Yeah.
in need.
Yeah.
And the number of people in the group that only was shown one person who was willing to help was so much higher than in the group that was shown the vast statistics of all the people that
Mm,
were hungry, which in a little way is counterintuitive because you would think if you show people how much of a greater need there is, it should elicit a greater response. But the reason why they were so discouraged was because they felt like their contribution wouldn't make any difference.
mm, mm.
Versus if you showed a person one girl who needs, you still feel like I can help this
Yeah.
situation. This is a manageable
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
And so I think when in the world we live in, it's so easy to become so overwhelmed in terms of like, where should I give? Like
Yeah.
what will my contribution even make in terms of a difference because there's so many organizations that need our money, so many problems. And I really think it's important to pray because not every lane is our lane. And I think God will show you where it is that you should invest. And wherever it is you're willing to invest, like Pastor Peter just said, I just want to really emphasize it's the power, man. Like that power is such a
Yeah.
difficult thing to let go of.
Yep. Yep.
The thing with the indigenous leaders, it's because you don't have the power. You're
Yeah.
relinquishing your power to somebody else.
Yeah.
You know, the reason why some of these other charities are so toxic is because they still allow you to hold all of the power. And
Mm.
that's such a sexy, attractive thing. I donate money
Yep.
and I get to say,
Yep.
I donated money. I
Yep.
am the helper. I
Yep.
am the savior.
Yep.
I
Yep.
am
Yeah.
the
That's right.
rescuer here. It's
That's
the
right.
power. But, you
Yep.
know, not to make this like super Christianese, but I mean, Jesus gave up all of the power.
All the
And
power.
so he modeled that for us. And if we are not willing to relinquish our power because it feeds our ego when we give, then
Mm.
clearly we need to readjust the way we think about giving in general, because that's not the way
Yeah.
Jesus did it. You know,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, I'm willing to, if you guys want to send an email or a comment, Peter at weekpastor.org or Suah at weekpastor.org, feel free to engage in the conversation. Um, if you disagree with us, totally cool. We'd love to hear that as well. But feel free to engage with us. And if you want us, if you would, like us to weigh in on our opinion on certain orgs or something like that, we can do that offline. I think that's definitely something that we can do. But I do hope that you'll take this seriously and really think about who you're impacting and how what kind of poverty you're addressing. Are you just trying to alleviate and help organizations deal with the root causes of poverty, or are you just perpetuating it and making it worse? And I think the reality is that so many, without even knowing, we've made it worse because we just care more about how we feel and how it makes us feel. And so that's important. So again, we'd love to hear your thoughts, any questions, any comments. That would be really great. But we just want to thank you. So I thought like a great way for us to end this was for you to give us another flex, but I'm going to refrain from that. Another bicep flex.
Listen, save it
I
for
I
when
would
we reach a
actually love
milestone.
I would love to see your quads. I'm assuming your quads probably got pretty developed too, though, huh?
Listen,
No.
okay, we're about to lose like half of our listeners, which we can't afford to do.
Okay.
Okay, so
All right.
we need to move
That's
on.
that's too much. All right. Well, listen, thank you so much for listening. Again, if you have any thoughts, any questions, feel free to comment on our social media posts, but also Peter or Suah at weekpastor.org. We'd love to hear from you. But thank you again for listening. Take care.
Bye.